Alright, Sisters of Battle players, I'm sorry. See, in my last Women in Warhammer video, I talked a lot of shit. Um, and I've gotta apologize for that, because as it turns out, Sisters of Battle are actually very badass.
We must not falter. We are his sword. We are his wrath.
How's it going, guys, gals, and MB pals? Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the second episode of Women in Warhammer. Today we're going to be discussing Sisters of Battle. Who are they? What do they believe? What do they do? And where can you go if you want to see more of these crazy ladies? The origins of these Sisters of Battle, as many things do, stems from the Horus Heresy. The Primarch Lorgar wrote the first holy book within the Imperium, the Lectitio Divinitatis, proclaiming the Emperor a god of humanity. Think of it like the Christian Bible, but for the humans of 40k. Worship of the Emperor first emerged on primitive planets within the Imperium that had regressed so far technologically that they'd lost all knowledge of things like space travel. So, when a man in golden armor rocks up and welcomes them into his technologically advanced empire with armies of demigods, you're going to assume that he himself is a god. This behavior doubled almost when the Emperor fell in his battle with Horus on the Vengeful Spirit. The people of the Imperium began to worship him as a savior who had sacrificed himself for the safety of humanity, almost in a similar way to Jesus' ascension to heaven. The idea being that the Emperor hadn't died, rather ascended back to divinity within the Immaterium. These cults that had sprung up within the galaxy would be absorbed by other stronger cults, and some would fade away, but they would also begin to spread their worship to their neighbors. One of these cults was the Temple of the Savior Emperor, which had emerged on Terra after the Horus Heresy, its leader having been a respected officer during the Siege of Terra. Their preaching would spread to anyone who would listen, and specifically spread across the Reformed Imperial Guard, or the Astra Militarum, as well as the Imperial Navy, many of whom had seen the horrors of chaos firsthand and wanted to believe in something that was a lot better than murder demon blood guy. The temple had over 1 billion followers on Terra, and it was still rapidly growing. By the start of the 32nd millennium, the temple was recognized by the High Lords of Terra as the state religion of the Imperium of Man, which was when the temple also gained its new name, the Adeptus Ministorum. So, after all that rambling, we finally reached the Adeptus Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle. During the Age of Apostasy, in the 36th millennium, a man known as Goj Vandire would seize power over the Adeptus Ministorum by usurping the office of the Ecclesiarch. Being a High Lord of Terra and one of the leaders of the Administratum, this made him arguably the most powerful man in the Imperium since the Great Crusade. What now became the Reign of Blood consisted of great purges, wiping out and killing anyone perceived as a traitor and a heretic. What eventually brought his tyranny to an end was the man Sebastian Thor, who led an ancient sect of the imperial cult that ended Vandire's corruption. In the aftermath, the Inquisition founded the Ordo Hereticus to ensure that those who plotted against the Imperium from within, like Mr. Vandire, would not be allowed to prosper. Alongside this new group was the Adeptus Sororitas, to serve as the fist of the ecclesiarchy and the military arm of the newly founded Ordo Hereticus. So now, in the 41st millennium, the Sisters of Battle serve as the Emperor's most faithful servants, perhaps even more faithful than many of the Space Marines. Don't let the Black Templars catch you saying that, of course. These sisters lead great crusades throughout the galaxy, wiping out anyone who would threaten their God Emperor's holy Imperium. They are raised from birth with the sole purpose to worship and serve him. Interestingly, however, while a lot of these nuns with guns are extremely psychotic murder ladies, there are some sects of these sisters who serve as medics, healing the wounded, aiding the poor and the sick, almost like actual nuns. There are also others who educate imperial nobles and governors, and even still, there are those whose job is to translate the many dialects used within the Imperium, including Xenos languages, curiously enough. This makes them a vital part of the Imperium, not just within the military, but in everyday life. Some of this lore is even reflected on the tabletop. The Sisters are a gunline army, not really a horde or elite army, somewhere in the middle. They have a high focus on shooting and silly stratagem shenanigans. And of course, this isn't to say that you can't do melee, quite the contrary, in fact. Apparently, the Order of the Bloody Rose was very powerful in 9th edition, but I didn't play enough of that, so I couldn't tell you if that's true or not. Aesthetically, Sisters of Battle are what would happen if the real-life Crusades were led by nuns. A few highlights for me are the Triumph of St. Catherine, the Exorcist tank, and of course, St. Celestine. Speaking of St. Celestine, I'd be doing the Sisters a huge disservice if I didn't mention the living saint herself. Once a simple Repentia, fighting alongside the Order of Our Martyred Lady, she was one of the multiple faithful that fought in the war against the heretics of the Palatine Schism. During one battle on the planet of Eurytion, she brought down over 100 foes with her, before being presumed to have died. However, when her body was recovered, they found that life was still there, lingering within her, touched with the divine will of the Emperor. After cleaning her body, they found that she was almost untouched by the battle, and the next day she was in such a good condition that she was able to lead the second assault on the traitors that were held up within the capital city. After that battle, she was named the sacred figurehead of the crusade. While the crusade's leader, Lord Militant Ansgar, thought the fighting would end on the capital planet of the Palatine sector, Celestine insisted upon liberating the planet of Sanctus Lace. Lice? I don't know. Little did she know how important that decision would be, because on that planet was the Shrine of St. Catherine, containing within it the golden power armor of the living saint, as well as the Ardent Blade. Wielding this holy armor and sacred blade, the newly declared living Saint Celestine waged countless wars in the Emperor's name, before being felled whilst fighting the renegade warmaster of Forax. While many believed she had perished, she still occasionally appears in battle to wage war against the mutant, the Xenos, and the heretic. So, ultimately, while the Sisters of Battle are not to everyone's taste, and aren't even exactly to my taste, they are still a core staple of the Warhammer 40k franchise. They're not nearly as powerful as Space Marines, nor as secretive and elusive as our beloved Sisters of Silence. They are still an incredibly powerful and badass faction, however. I'd recommend them to anyone who enjoys the more religious aspects of the Imperium of Ban. So, with that, we reach the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, comment, all the things. It'd greatly help me. And please remember, as always, that even in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the future is still very, very clear.